Hello and welcome to the Raw review here on Wrestling with Regret. Now, of course, we're still 50 some odd days away from WrestleMania in Tampa, but it's never too early to begin plans for 2021. They just announced on Monday morning that Los Angeles is the host city for next year's WrestleMania in the soon-to-be-completed SoFi Stadium, technically Inglewood, California. But either way, the big story here is that for the first time since WrestleMania 31 in Santa Clara, you're going to see a West Coast WrestleMania. Finally, a WrestleMania that will start and end on the same day. You love to see it. Now, me personally, I'm excited for it because, like I said, it's on the West Coast. I live on the West Coast, far less travel involved for me when I'm going to be there next year for all the festivities like I do every year. I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I'm going to attend that year's WrestleMania. I know I'm not going to the one in Tampa this year. I'll be in Tampa for a bunch of different things for Mania weekend, but I'm actually not going to go to WrestleMania this year. I haven't really made that very public as of late, but I think it's just, last year just really broke me when I was in New York. And I know that, the whole issue of getting back to a hotel from like MetLife Stadium is a far different beast than, like, say, getting back to a hotel in Tampa, Florida. It's going to be a different experience, but I just want to be able to sit in my Airbnb and watch the show from the comfort of my own home with close access to like food and bathrooms without having to sit in line or spend a shitload of money. So that's what my experience in Tampa is. I'm going to experience this year's WrestleMania because it can be a little bit closer. Maybe things might be different, but of course that's a whole year away. Never too early to start planning those, so we'll see how that goes. But anyway, on with the review. The Messiah Maniacs open up the show, and one of the big notable news stories from the weekend is that Buddy Murphy is now being referred to simply as Murphy. He is the latest victim in the ongoing case where a lot of wrestlers just lose one of their names for no particular reason. And over the years, I feel like some of these name changes, we get used to them, and they roll off the tongue better in some cases than like when they had two names, like Rusev, for example. Alexander Rusev sounds weird now. Antonio Cesaro sounds weird now. Big E Langston sounds weird now. But those are examples of Elias Sampson as well. Those are examples of guys who I think did okay after their names were shortened. Andrade is kind of like one of those where I think Andrade Cien Almas is a great name, but Andrade by itself could also work. It's unique enough. But Murphy, what do I do? Do I just call him Murph? Like some asshole who just watched Interstellar for the first time? Why don't you call him like Brother Murphy to fill in with a cult thing you got going on with Seth and his group? Brother Murphy, Brother Akam, Brother Razor, that sort of thing would be kind of cool. But nope, he's just Murphy now, and I guess we just have to live with it for a while. Anyway, Seth says he's going to lead us all into the future as the Monday Night Messiah, which he says that the fans gave him that name, but I'm pretty sure the company called him that before the fans ever really made it stick. Anyway, he says he's tired. His patience is wearing thin with Kevin Owens and his friends. Kevin shows up on stage and says, "You may keep talking, but I keep on fighting." And the Viking Raiders show up. They has fight with the disciples of Seth. Then from behind, Samoa Joe comes in the ring and puts Seth in Coquina Clutch for a minute. The good guys chase the baddies out. They stand tall at the end. It was an okay segment to set up the main event, but all it did for me was just make it very, very obvious the heels are going to win that main event match. Becky Lynch shows up for her next match. She defends the Raw Women's title once again against Asuka. It's a rematch from the Royal Rumble match they had 2 weeks ago. More good stuff from these ladies. At one point, we actually see a disarm her by Becky when Asuka's caught up in the ropes, which is pretty innovative. We see some more stuff with them on the apron, and every time they wrestle on the apron, I just get tense and nervous for them because all I can think about is their match at the Rumble last year when they do this twisting fisherman neckbreaker off the apron and it looked like shit and they both almost killed themselves. So I've always been nervous about that ever since then, but they pulled it off well here, well enough. And in the end, dizzying array of near falls. Becky hits the Uranagi or manhandle slam, whatever, to win the match and retain the championship. Then right afterward, Shayna Baszler from NXT jumps Becky from behind, and then she just reaches down and takes a big old bite out of the back of her neck. Bites the back of her neck like a vampire, like a really weird vampire. Because the vampires bite along here where the actual blood lives. But no, Shayna bites the back of Becky's neck. Her mouth is covered in blood and everything. And it's a very graphic, stunning visual. Becky's grabbing the back of her neck in pain, but she keeps telling the EMTs it's just a flesh wound. This was a very interesting way to make a statement. I will say I'm on the fence about it because some people are crapping all over it, and I'm kind of like, well, it definitely shows a very intense side of Shayna. arena, the level at which we haven't quite seen. Like, we've seen her be nasty and mean and very sadistic in NXT as the women's champion, but this is a whole new level for her, I feel. So is this going to be her thing now? Is this the way she makes a statement here? Are they going to acknowledge this? Like, is she going to keep trying to do this again? That is what I'm curious / nervous about. I don't think I'm going to list it as a pro or con this week, because I'm just kind of like on the fence about the whole thing. I think it was unique, it was impactful, but it was still really weird. Tag team action up next as Mojo Rawley and Riddick Moss take on the Street Profits. The Profits cut a promo saying that Mojo's riding Rob Gronkowski's coattails. I think the promo they had before the match was actually longer than the match itself. It was pretty short, and the Street Profits squashed Riddick pretty quickly. Then afterward, and after the Street Profits made their way back through the crowd and everything to celebrate, Mojo tries to help Riddick back up. Riddick hits a small package out of nowhere, 3 count, and all of a sudden he's your new 24/7 champion. And he leaves. What a weird storyline this has been with Mojo Rawley for the last 3 weeks. He gets Riddick Moss as his muscle and his backup. He's completely ineffective. Mojo just loses after winning the 24/7 championship, and then he loses his title to his backup, who we know nothing about, really. We've learned nothing new about him since he's been called up. So let's just see where it goes. Meanwhile, backstage, Becky steals her own ambulance to the local medical facility, and then we see the return of the VIP lounge starring MVP. First time we've seen this talk show on Raw in about a decade. His guest is Drew McIntyre, and MVP puts him over and everything, says, you eliminated Brock Lesnar, you won the Royal Rumble, I'm so proud of you, you and I go way back, you deserve this and everything. And then he tries to stir the pot a bit by saying that some people are saying some things about Drew and his win and everything. And then MVP wants to offer his managerial services essentially to Drew. And then, in response, MVP gets a bit lippy with him. Drew beats him up, hits the Claymore at MVP with this great bump over the couch, knocks it back and everything. And that was pretty fun. It was a good little segment. It establishes Drew as more of his own man. He's not going to be bought out. He's not going to be swayed by outside influences. And, it comes at the expense of a guy who's not going to hurt. He's not going to suffer from getting beaten up. Like, that's kind of his role in this limited thing, is to put other guys over, and MVP does a very good job at it. So yeah, I like what this segment, as short as it was, it did a good job in building Drew up.
Robert John! Mrs. Piedra! After all of these years, you still don't know my name. Coño, carajo, puñeta. My name is Shabba-ba-ba-bam.
Angel Garza and Zelina Vega in the ring celebrating what they did to Rey Mysterio last week, the big DDT on the concrete. And Angel calls himself a ladies' man. Out comes Humberto Carrillo in his street clothes, and he just bum rushes the ring. He fights Angel for a bit until security takes him away and he's sent back to the back. So Angel has his match with Cedric Alexander. It's a fairly short matchup here. Cedric's got maybe one moment to shine, but it's pretty much Angel's match. They do tease the concrete spot yet again, but it's not meant to be. Angel wins with the wing clipper, and that's pretty much that. Andrade's temporary loss with his suspension and everything has really been Angel Garza's gain. Whether they had a plan to bring him to the main roster anytime soon or not, or if it was just basically done because Andrade was gone, then I think this has been a great boon for Angel, because he's getting this exposure right now on the main roster. He's already gotten to show a lot of his personality that we also saw at NXT, so I think he's doing pretty good right now. Rhea Ripley interviewed backstage, and she's asked if she's overlooking Bianca Belair, thinking too far ahead to Charlotte at WrestleMania. In comes Sarah Logan, and she basically says, what are you doing on our turf? Who the hell are you? And Rhea goes, I'm Rhea Ripley. Who the hell are you? And she walks off. Put that on a t-shirt. Then we see a backstage promo with Bobby Lashley and Lana's upset that Ricochet stole Bobby's dream. And then Lashley basically says, I'm much bigger than him. I'm going to make him unable to compete at Super Showdown. So then a continuation from the last thing with the ladies, Sarah Logan shows up at ringside and she says, I'm going to defend my turf by any means necessary, calls out Rhea to a match, and so then Rhea Ripley shows up. Charlotte Flair appears on the stage to watch, and it's a big old squash thing. Sarah gets no offense in, and Rhea wins pretty resoundingly with the Riptide. Then Rhea asks Charlotte, hey, what about the challenge I made for you at WrestleMania? And Charlotte's like, well, what if you lose a takeover? Woo! And that's pretty much that. Well, that helped advance the plot. Ricochet's in the gorilla position before his match with Bobby Lashley, and he says he's heard all that kind of mess before from guys like Lashley, how they're bigger and stronger than he is, but he has something that they don't, and nothing's going to stop him from facing Lesnar at Super Showdown. We go to that match now, and it's a really good match here. It tells a really good story. Lashley throws his weight around the whole time, but Ricochet is still very determined. He's driven. He's not hesitant. He's just going in for the attack every chance he gets against a much larger guy here. At one point, there's some more commentary by Lawler here, the insight about, facing larger opponents, and Lawler says, I never liked doing that against guys like Bruiser Brody or guys like Hulk Hogan. It's not the bigger they are, the harder they fall. It's the bigger they are, the harder they hit. And he also, the match is sponsored by the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and then as they come back from that commercial, Lawler name drops Jim Carrey as his old co-star from Man on the Moon. Very nice little throwback there. Lashley tries a back suplex at the top rope, but Ricochet lands on his feet, couple the drop kicks, 630, and for the second week in a row, Rico beats Lashley clean as a whistle, and that's really impressive. Makes Ricochet look like $1 million, making him look really strong going into Super Showdown. I do feel bad for Lashley though, because I would think that after trudging through that god-awful storyline with Lana and Rusev for as long as he did, you'd think he would get some kind of reward for that, reward for his patience, get some kind of actual push, and not a push as in, oh, you're on TV more, but have it be substantial and have it actually mean something, because right now he's just still losing matches, but now he's got Lana in his corner, so yay! Randy Orton is back to try and explain his actions against Edge a couple of weeks ago. Doesn't get too far in the speech though, and he's cut off by Matt Hardy, who shows up for reasons, and Matt brings up his history with Edge, and that actually gets a Lita chant after he says that. He brings up history between those guys and Christian and Jeff, how they'd go up and down the road together, and they were just trying to fight for a common dream of being superstars. Then after Edge retired, all that hatred, animosity that he had for Edge just went away. How happy he was for Edge's return, but Orton ruined his big comeback at the Rumble and everything, so what the hell's wrong with you, man? And then Randy tries to go for an RKO. Matt blocks it, fights a bit. He ends up getting an RKO for his troubles, and then Orton hits him with a one-man concerto to really end that segment there. So we still have no real answers from Orton's side, but this is one of those angles where it seems like they're going to wait a bit longer to just milk it for a while before Orton finally gives his big explanation. But as far as Matt Hardy goes, this seems like that's the end for him in WWE in an on-air capacity. He tweeted goodbye with a screen grab of him cutting that promo tonight. So yeah, really, and not to mention other tweets preceding this, in the month leading up to this. It sounds like he's been wanting out, or he's on his way out, and this seems to be it, which is kind of a sad way to go out, but at the same time, just looking at the grand scheme of things, Matt Hardy has had a much greater and much more successful career in and out of the company than I think anyone could have predicted, 10 or 15 years ago. So, not a bad way to go out. Very dramatic exit for him, and, it's just one of those ones, it's kind of a double-edged sword for him. Ruby Riot's being interviewed backstage, and she says she knows the real Liv Morgan, that she doesn't buy Liv's statements of having a makeover and being this more stronger, more independent woman. Liv will always be a follower, and Ruby's trying to prove that to everyone. I am so confused by the story arc of Liv Morgan at this point, because she got all those vignettes signaling her return, only for it to be this small part in the Lana Lashley Rusev storyline. It was never given a proper explanation, and again, I will keep mentioning that until it is explained, basically. And now we have Ruby Riott coming in to basically say, oh, that whole return meant nothing because she's still just the regular old Liv Morgan with the pink hair and everything who followed me around. So what are we supposed to feel in this? What is the actual, the objective reality of the situation? I don't think we know yet. Do they know what's going to happen? It's just, to me, it's just so muddled now. I'm curious. Again, we'll see where it plays out, but I'm not liking what they've been doing. I feel like Liv Morgan's been getting kind of tossed around from angle to angle, and it's just what was the point of any of that stuff we just saw in the last month and a half? Speaking of things I'm sick of, Aleister Black takes on Akira Tozawa. It's a squash match, and then Aleister has some more cryptic tough guy words at the end. He sits down, the lights change. Okay, this guy's had more promo time than ring time, I feel, since, May or so of last year. And it's just when are they going to put him in a meaningful feud or program where something is on the line here? The last major thing we saw was Aleister and Buddy Murphy. I'm sorry, Murphy. And that ended up with Murphy going to join Seth Rollins. And so what does Aleister gain from that storyline? Nothing. Murphy's a tag team champion now. What does Aleister have to show for beating him like 3 matches in a row? I just want to see this go somewhere with him. Becky Lynch is driven back to the arena in the ambulance, all patched up from the neck bite attack, and she's cutting a promo in the ring now. Big chance for her here in response to her toughness and her resiliency. She doesn't care how tough Shayna is, she says, but she's going to track her down and break her, and that Shayna had better hope to take her out before she takes Shayna out. This is a really good promo here. Really shows how tough and badass Becky is in all this. I will say it's a big departure from the last couple of weeks of her where she seems kind of like lackadaisical and overconfident at times, wearing the big deal with its shades and everything. This could, motivate her to be back the badass Becky she was. Maybe the last couple of weeks were an aberration. Either way, I think it was a great job of building Becky up, making her strong. And this is for building presumably to the WrestleMania matchup between them, and time will tell. But yeah, I think Becky did a good job here. Main event time, it's an 8-man tag team match as Seth Rollins, Murphy, Akam, and Razor take on Kevin Owens, the Viking Raiders, and Samoa Joe. Rollins on the mic to start the matchup, but KO and friends, and the rest of Team Ring of Honor, have none of it, and so they start out with a brawl here. It's a big wild battle, great work by all 8 guys. At one point, Kevin is the wild man of the group again, the big stunt man, does a big old dive off the top rope, onto the outside, onto everybody. And then Joe's got Murphy in the Coquina Clutch. Seth stomps Joe when the referee doesn't see him. That's kind of his MO these days. Murphy pins Joe to win, and so Seth and his friends win yet again, and Kevin Owens and his buddies look like losers yet again. It's been such a one-sided feud here with Rollins constantly getting the win against Kevin and his friends. Makes you wonder where they're going to go from here. Are they going to keep this going? What matchup is next or left they could do at this point where it goes, oh, I would be interested in seeing that now, and seeing maybe now Kevin and his buddies will turn the tide, because they haven't yet. So where do they go from here? Do they keep fighting each other? Does Kevin just relent and join them? Does Kevin move on? Does Aleister Black get involved? Because like I said, he's gained nothing after feuding with Buddy Murphy and winning all 3 matches. So maybe get him involved, because that'll tip the scales a little bit. I don't know. Lots of places they could go with this, but so far the thing has been very one-sided. And like I said, and for good reason, because they want to establish Seth and his gang as being really big tough guys to beat. I totally get that. But where it's going to go from there, who are they going to face next, who's any kind of credible opponents, that I'm really curious about. My grade for this week's Raw is a C+. I feel the strongest parts of this episode came in a lot of the promos. Things like Becky Lynch's response to the bite attack, Matt Hardy and Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre in the VIP lounge, and even to a lesser extent Rhea Ripley after, she beats Sarah Logan pretty decisively. Just things that help build these characters and their motives and everything. I feel the matches themselves, at least the ones that weren't total squashes, I think they were fine matches, nothing too outrageous, nothing too wild about them. I feel that we're getting a lot of repeat things from the last couple of weeks, and it's just still going on. And it makes you wonder, how much of it's wheel spinning, makes you wonder, what, if anything, I'm curious to know if even the company and the writers know where some of these characters are going to go come WrestleMania time, because I certainly can't tell for a lot of characters here on this show, and the last couple of weeks, this one in particular, didn't really help answer any some of those questions for me, at least. But let me know what you thought about this week's Raw in the comments section below, and be sure to give it a letter grade by going to the iCard in the corner of your screen. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.